Welcome to our Rural Library Network Conversations for Action. My name is Regina Washington, and I will be your moderator today. I serve as the Director of Rural Impact Networks, which houses the Rural Library Network and the Rural College Access and Success Community of Practice. We also provide Conversations for Action and annual summits for capacity building for our practitioners in the field. With a public health background, I'm very passionate about addressing disparities and working with communities at the intersection of health and education. There are still many children, rural and urban, that have limited access to educational support opportunities, healthcare and social services, technology, and resources that would support successful educational outcomes. All students should have a basic knowledge of science, technology, engineering, and math, language, and literacy. Rural Impact Networks works with the rural communities across the country to focus on transforming learning into action for sustainable results through place-based and collective impact approaches. So again, we lift up the importance of increasing diversity, equity, and inclusion, recognizing that we all are a part of an ecosystem of resources, services, and advocates for underserved communities, addressing, reducing, eliminating barriers, transforming leaders to adopt best and promising practices to accelerate educational outcomes in rural areas, and also creating strong, resilient, and healthy communities. The Rural Library Network is a cradle to career initiative recognizing the unique role of libraries as more than books, more than programming, but as a catalyst for change, building capacity within your community of families, of leaders, and also organizations, while aligning systems for sustainability. Today's conversation for action features speakers that will focus on the nuts, bolts, and literacy collaborative models for STEM and libraries. First up, we will have Joseph Collins. Joseph is a mission commander and the program coordinator for the Challenger Learning Center of Kentucky. For nearly 10 years at the center, he has worked to improve education through program development and implementation to inspire and educate. His most impactful accomplishment is the creation of their STEAM Team Internship program, which provides young students with impactful life experiences and critical life in a working environment, critical life skills in a working environment. Joseph and his team work to create new experiences for students and look forward to many more years of inspiring and exploring. Kelly Reddin will be the second speaker. Kelly is currently a solution architect and a global master's trainer with Lego Education, creating solution and implementation plans and facilitating workshops for processes and products from preschool to college. She presents keynote speeches, joins panel discussions on education, and works on special projects. Prior to joining Lego Education, she taught elementary and middle school, as well as college courses. Third, we will have Justin Barkley. Justin is a 2011 graduate of Texas A&M University, and he holds master's degrees in museum studies from the University of Oklahoma and library information sciences from the University of Alabama. He began his career in the library as a technology coordinator for the TLL Temple Memorial Library in 2011 and has served as the outreach coordinator and assistant director before being named executive director in 2017. In his spare time, Justin enjoys Texas Aggie athletics, live music, and theater, and buying far too many books for a person who works in his own library. I've asked the speakers to respond to 3 framing questions. And I will also encourage our attendees to respond in a chat as well to these questions as well, as you feel so moved. How can libraries support the development of STEM learning? What strategies can be used to increase enrollment, retention, and completion of girls and underrepresented populations in STEM programs? What tools and resources are available to support STEM in libraries? Without further ado, welcome, Joseph, to our Conversations for Action. Welcome.
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today. Give me just one moment. I'm going to share my screen here and we will get started. All right, you should be able to see my screen now. As Regina was mentioning, my name is Joseph Collins. I'm an engineer here at the Challenger Learning Center, and I'm here today to talk about building STEM, how we build positive spaces using positive practices and positive collaborations. I want to talk about how we engineer the system, how we build a better classroom or a better library space. I'm going to talk about gamification in the classroom, some methodologies we can use to build engagement and build retention. And I'm going to show you some sample teaching tools, some things that we've had success with in the past. I'm going to be moving kind of quickly. I've got a lot of slides to cover, but my contact information is going to be at the end here. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me at any time. I'm happy to respond. So I want to talk a little bit about STEM. We all know that STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and math. We're all pretty familiar with that. But do we know what engineering really is, what it is and how it works? Engineering comes from 2 old Latin words, ingenium and ingeniare, which means cleverness and to devise. Basically, engineering means to cleverly create something. Or in a more technical definition, it means to work skillfully and with a plan to accomplish a clearly defined goal. And engineering is absolutely important. I tell my students that we use engineering in everything that we do, whether that's building a robot, going to Mars, or something as simple as finding a better way to take the garbage out. And we can use engineering to build better programs, to build better engagement with the community, to build better equity. I want to talk real quick about the difference between a scientist and an engineer, just so you understand that. A scientist asks questions and uses the scientific method to conduct experiments to answer those questions. So they want to learn about the world around us. An engineer uses what's called the engineering design process. We identify problems and constraints, and we develop solutions to these problems. So to kind of put that in perspective, I want to share with you one of my favorite engineering quotes. Scientists study the world as it is. Engineers create the world that never has been. So engineering is just all about problem solving and making the world a better place. That's what we want to do with our students, and that's what we want to encourage you to do as well. I talked about the engineering design process briefly. Here's what that looks like. On the left side, you see a very rigid kind of technical description of the engineering design process. I like to use the one on the right. It's the same process, just a little bit more colorful, a little bit easier to read. It's ideal for working with youth and young learners, young readers. And basically what this is all about is using what's called iterative design. Basically, we start somewhere, we work through the process, and each time we build on what we've learned in the past to make what we've done better. And like I said before, that can be building a robot, or that can be hosting a community engagement day. Basically, we start out by asking questions, we identify our needs, and outline clear goals. Those are very important steps. You can't have a successful event unless you know what the purpose of your event is. We go on by planning, we brainstorm, we identify our constraints, the things that are going to limit us, and then we identify our opportunities and resources. What can we use to meet our goals? Third, very important, we execute our plan. None of this planning is going to do us any good if we don't execute it and go out there and host these community engagement days or involve students in our literacy programs and things of that nature. Fourth and finally, we revise. So we take everything that we've done so far, we go back and we examine our work, we look at what we've done and how we can improve on that. So these are, very roughly speaking, the 4 steps to the engineering design process and iterative design. Using those 4 steps, you can build out a program from scratch that will be very successful. I want to talk briefly about how we build equity and how libraries are involved in that. How do libraries provide an equitable space? What should we make sure that we are providing? Libraries provide access to computers and technical tools that may be otherwise inaccessible. Many of our students do not have access to computers or tablets or Wi-Fi access. So having a safe space to do that can give them the tools to build accomplishment, to build literacy, and that's absolutely important. Libraries provide professional guidance and role modeling for students. That is very, very important. We cannot compete with Google and YouTube and Wikipedia for ease of access to information. Students can go to Google and YouTube and they can get answers very, very quickly. What they cannot get access to easily is that positive role modeling and professional guidance. Students may be able to get answers, but they may not know what those answers mean or what to do with them. Students don't learn the importance of saying, I don't know, but I know how to find out. And by providing those positive role modeling experiences, we can teach students not just answers, but we can teach students how to learn. Libraries also provide a safe and fair space for students to work and learn. Many of the times I work with females in engineering, for example, and there's a lot of prejudice, a lot of problems. Many young girls feel that engineering isn't for them. They can't grow up to be engineers. And I think part of our job is to show them that absolutely you can be a female in science, you can be a female in engineering. So providing this safe and equitable space is very important because it puts all of our students kind of on an equal playing field so they can all work and learn equally. Finally, we can provide incentive to learn. Sometimes that's through rewards or positive feedback or just good example setting. We can show students that it's fun and exciting and meaningful to learn and to be literate. We can set the example that we read and we learn. Even as adults and professionals, we are always reading and learning and increasing our skill set. And we can show them the importance of that. So that role modeling and that positive incentive is absolutely critical to building that engagement and building those retaining programs. All right, stepping away from engineering a little bit, I want to talk about gamification. Gamification is a methodology that you can use to build retention and build engagement with your programs, to keep students coming back and to keep them interested. Gamification is basically exactly what it sounds like. It's the application of gameplay elements to encourage engagement. Usually that means some point scoring systems, competition with others, or specific rules of play. Students find these programs very engaging, so you can have a lot of success if you build out your programs using gamification. Why should we use gamification? It provides interactive learning. One of the kind of buzzword phrases that I use a lot is hands-on and minds-on. When students are competing against each other or against a predefined system, they are hands-on and minds-on, and they are ready to learn. They are actively involved in the learning process. It's not passive, and that greatly facilitates the learning process. It utilizes positive habit forming. I'm sure that many of you see students or have kids of your own who cannot leave their video game systems alone because they use those same positive habit forming techniques. By utilizing positive habit forming, we can keep students coming back over and over again. We can keep them engaged and keep them interested. It also has real-world applications. Many companies out there today use gamification. Companies like Nike, Starbucks, McDonald's, many more. So using gamification develops real-world skills that students will use later in life. It also offers immediate performance feedback. What we're really talking about here is building proper behaviors. We have a set of behaviors that we want our students to learn. We want our students to follow those behaviors. By offering immediate feedback that says, yes, you are doing a good job. Yes, you are doing the right thing. Our students will know what those behaviors are and know what they need to do. So let me give you a practical example of gamification using a company called Microsoft and a system called Windows. You've probably heard of them before. So when Microsoft was first developing Windows, they sent out some demos and they did some demonstrations. They went to Carnegie Mellon, and it was a terrible disaster. The IT team at Carnegie Mellon said that they came out with this pathetic and naive system, and they just knew that Microsoft was never going to accomplish anything. And I think we all know that wasn't quite the case. Many reviews criticized Windows for the use of a mouse because it was a new concept at the time. No one had ever really used a mouse before. They didn't know what it was or why they should use it. The New York Times actually stated that Windows was inflexible for keyboard users because it depended on a mouse, and many users at the time didn't know what a mouse was and they didn't want to learn. They didn't want to use one. So to combat that problem, Microsoft came up with a specialized software tool to help people learn to use a mouse. They developed Solitaire, another program that you may have seen in the past. Solitaire was developed for the Windows 3.0 operating system and was specifically designed to create a relaxing way for users to learn to use a mouse. It was designed to soothe people who might be intimidated by learning new technologies while subtly teaching them technologies such as clicking and dragging and dropping. Did you guys know that Solitaire was such an effective teaching tool? Microsoft chose a gamification style because they knew that it would be appealing, it would be positively addicting, and that students and learners would want to come back and play it over and over to build those skills. They wanted to avoid kind of the dullness and the tedium of a professional development or a technical training because they knew that people might avoid doing those things. Later on, Microsoft would go on to repeat their success with Minesweeper, a program that was designed to teach users how to right-click. Microsoft saw great success with early gamification, starting with their gamer score system, which they pioneered in console gaming. So Microsoft has been a pioneer in gamification and this sort of positively reinforced behavioral patterns. And we can utilize those same exact methodologies to create engaging programs. Let me give you one more example here. The McDonald's Monopoly game. Many of you may be familiar with this. This is a perfect example of gamification. It incentivizes purchasing and encourages potential buyers using gamification techniques. It indicates a desired behavior, sets game rules, offers potential rewards, and encourages collection. All of those different aspects of gamification to keep people coming back over and over again while keeping them excited and interested. People are always wanting to collect these pieces, to try for those prizes, to be a part of this program. So we can do the same thing with our programs. One other thing you can do is offer achievements. One thing I want to suggest is the Open Badges platform. Achievements can be used for short-term or long-term goals, and they provide immediate evidence of positive behavior. Students love to collect badges. They love to collect achievements. So this is a fantastic way of showing them this is the behavior that we want. It also provides clear goals for them. If you can provide them with a list of achievements or goals or badges, this will show them exactly what they need to do to earn those achievements or badges. So it really sets in stone the behaviors that you're looking for. All right, I've got just a couple minutes left. I want to talk about some of the tools, technologies, and other systems that we have had success with in the past. If you have any questions about any of these, like I said, don't hesitate to reach out to me. One thing we've been doing recently is offering STEM kits. These STEM kits can be as simple as spaghetti and marshmallows, paper clips and batteries, very simple, cheap materials that you can buy at Walmart or you can order off Amazon. I want to encourage you to go to teachengineering.org. There's a huge amount of resources, simple engineering activities on that website that you can utilize to build these STEM kits. What we've been doing is tying them to a book night with the goal of boosting that literacy. So we'll use books such as How I Learned to Love Math, Rosie Revere Engineer, or Mousetronaut to tie in the activities that we're doing with the STEM kits. So you can boost literacy while also engaging in engineering practices. Minecraft is very popular, as well as Minecraft EDU. Offering classes using these systems can be a great way to get students excited and engaged in learning. Breakout EDU is another fantastic resource. You can use Breakout EDU to run breakout rooms that are either in person or online and digital. Students tend to get very excited about these, and you can build in literacy and math concepts into the breakout rooms as well. So they're a great tool to utilize. Also, they are not terribly expensive, which is always a plus. We purchased a virtual reality system to use at special events to allow students to experience the solar system, travel through space, travel through the human body, again, tying into some of the books that we offer. So we tie in virtual reality, first-person learning with literacy skills. So that's another great way you can tie in the latest technology with literacy and learning. Something that we've had great success with is our green screen chroma key system. We have a green screen and a simple camera that we purchased. We have used our green screen for costume contests, Halloween events, Just like you see here in the picture, all kinds of special events. It's very cheap, very easy to set up, and it's a lot of fun for the community. Like I mentioned before, we host costume and cosplay contests. We tie into comic books, graphic novels, the latest books that are being released to encourage students to be a part of the story, to tie in their own creativity with the story, to really bring in the community, bring in that community engagement. Snap circuits are a great, relatively cheap way to teach engineering using electricity and electronics. We've had success with these programs from the very young ages all the way up through high school, so a great learning resource. The Makey Makey is another fantastic tool to have at your libraries. You can use these to create interactive circuits, so students can create all sorts of different inventions, which is a great way to learn and have that hands-on, minds-on experience. 3D printing is very popular right now. Our local library has a 3D printer. They charge a small fee for the public to bring in those plans, and they 3D print your object right in front of you there, so you can have that the very next day. So it's a very good way to recoup your costs and again, get the community engaged. Scratch is a free tool. You can use it to teach literacy through coding. You can use it on tablets, on computers. Very easy to learn, very effective way to teach coding. The first Lego League, something we may talk a little bit more later on, is a great way to teach Lego robotics. It also has a presentation component, so students get very involved and very excited in research and learning. We're also involved in Lego Sumo. Students are, again, very excited about the competitive aspect about this, learning, coding, and competing using Lego robotics. We've had great success, especially with adults, using trivia nights. We have also done younger students events with video games, comic books, and things like that. A great way to bring the community in. We charge a small ticket price and bring students in from all over the community. And finally, we host local artist nights where we bring in local artists to teach an art class, kind of bringing that A for arts into the STEAM aspect. All right, I think I'm about out of time here. So here's my contact information. I'll leave this up here for just a minute. Like I said, if you have any questions about any of this content, please don't hesitate to ask questions in the chat or reach out to me directly. Joseph Collins at the Challenger Learning Center of Kentucky. So thank you for joining me today, and I hope it was helpful. All right, I'll turn this over to our next speaker.
My name is Kelly Reddin, and I'm from Lego Education, and I'm glad to be with you today. We're going to talk about putting your hands-on activities with literacy and even more. So one of the things that I think that we need to consider is who is the all and how do we include everyone? So Joseph mentioned several things, and we definitely want to think about it in the literacy and all. So what is literacy? Is it just reading, or is it literacy as in we need to be able to communicate and understand what's going on around us with computer science as well as reading? So I have a broad definition for literacy. And then who is the all? Is it just the children? Is it the adults? Teachers, librarians, who in the community? Well, I think, again, very broadly, I think everyone. So I think your programs that you are looking for need to have this very broad aspect. If we're looking mostly at the lens of children, then I want to think every child has the ability to learn and grow, but what they have around them when they're young, those supports determine just how quickly they're going to get there and how far they can go. Now, there are exceptions, but for the most part, we need to know we need to provide that support. Interests vary from person to person, area to area, and so should the opportunities for learning, because they need to have something that's meaningful to them, not just because I like it. All right. But what's important, and Joseph was really pushing this very well, is that hands-on is the learning that works no matter what area. Science, yes. Math, yes. Language arts, yes. Engineering, yes. Everywhere, okay? And all stages all ages of development can work with something that we have as simple as a little brick, okay? Which are what people think of when you think of Lego. Now, why would I say hands-on is so critical? Well, this is why. And what's critical here is not just the hands-on, but you can see that it's on a weekly basis. That means it has to be regular. It cannot be one and done. Oh, we had a family night and now we're good for the whole year. No, it has to be hands-on where they continuously get that interaction, the collaboration with their peers, the thought process, computational thinking, where they're trying and iterating. You heard that before. All those are critical. So how can we have hands-on literacy? Well, we're going to start perhaps with that reading and listening. But in our models, we build Lego models that represent what we're thinking. So if I am reading a book, I can build a model that shows you what's going on in that story, what comes next in the story, how I wish the story would end, or how I would start to write the next story. So all of those things are just simple, and you don't need specific sets for that. That's just bricks. And it's always nice to have the little minifigures, because when you have minifigures, you have people imagining people and conversations. So there are often times where we make recommendations of books to go with our products. And so here's just a snapshot of one. We have a product called Brick Q Motion that has a sports theme, and it's all about physical science. So it does not require technology. That means it's got a very low entry point. No one gets all frantic about it, and very high success rate. And these are reading connections to some of the activities that are in there. And this also has a take-home component so that you could do an activity and have this, not because our stuff is non-consumable, you could have that, and then you could have a consumable, which is a take-home where the kids continue the learning. What about story tales? So again, this is for your very early learners. They can read a book and build a model. Yes, but they can also create their own stories where they can work together with another person and collaborate. And that will allow them to start to be much more creative. We want them to be able to be risk takers in a good way. And that risk goes back to what Joseph was talking about, where we want them to try new things. We want them to feel confident that they can. The more activities, the more hands-on, the more times that they have the ability to do something and try something, the more confident they get. When they're confident, then they feel like they will be able to succeed, regardless of what group I belong to, if you will. Because we remember when we go back to that for all, if I'm confident that I can make it, I'll make it. If I'm confident and I look around and I see a lot of other students that look just like me that are confident, and the adults around me are encouraging me, we'll make it. We will be able to try new things, and starting with sharing our ideas and being confident that my idea is a good idea in reading and in sharing stories is a good start. So if you've just got bricks, let's say you don't have any more money to spend right now, but you've got somebody donated to you a box of bricks, what could you do? Well, to start kind of at the top, you could have kids build stories and do stop motion animation. If you've got tablets, you've got a way to do that. Or you could start very simply with, how about building an animal? And from there, we can move into, where does the animal live? What does it eat? What is its prey or predator? Those kind of things. And you can just start building it out and having them build more and more. But what can they do? You're at the library. They can research and then change and learn about the conditions of that. They can build a tower, and you'll notice that these pictures, you've got one where the Lego bricks are traditionally put together and one where it's not. So don't think inside the box. What else can I do with this? So you could use Lego bricks for counting and counting the visible studs. And is that how, you start to, as they get older, you can talk about surface area. So you can bring in science and just look at there are just a few ways that you can put bricks together. But if you have 6 bricks that are 2x4s, there are over 1 million ways that you could put those 6 bricks together. So that leads right into that engineering and trying to figure out, what's a different way? And that's if they're all the same color. So you can imagine how much more it would be. So what can I do? Well, I can sort by color. I can sort by shape. I can sort by the way that they'd be used, the function. So there are just tons of things that get kids computationally thinking about life. I can use them to measure. And I can measure, of course, height or length in bricks. And if I use different kinds of bricks, they're going to have different kinds of measurements, and I can relate those. And then, of course, we can get kids to build themselves and talk about themselves. So one of the things that I think is important is to talk a little bit about that funding aspect. And I know that often there's a great deal of money that seems that it's out there, but how do I get a hold of it? And I will tell you that Donors Choose is one that several teachers and not-for-profits have had very good success with. There are pros and cons to it, so it's not the end-all to be-all. But there are some grants for after-school programming. Now, yes, as a library, you will have to meet some criteria for it, but depending on the programs that you offer, you may be eligible for the gear. Another way might be for you to be able to work with your local school districts if you are providing some supplemental after-school programs. Right now, there is a lot of federal money coming down to the states for that particular thing with ESSER. Now, it's not specifically for libraries that are not-for-profit outside the school system, I'll be honest. But there are ways that you can probably work with your local school district to get potentially look for some grant money from there. And then another part is if you can offer some professional development for teachers who are interested in moving toward STEM, STEAM, and those kind of programs, you might be eligible to receive money for that professional development through Title II and some other funding mechanisms. And when I was doing just a quick search, I found Grant Watch for Kentucky. Now it has grants all over the place. I mean, a lot of things that don't apply at all. But there were some things in there that might be worth looking at for you. Okay. So when I think of the whole community engagement, I think of everything that Joseph was talking about, where you have activities that draw in different parts of the community. And I think of literacy in its fullest form. And I think that he was dead on right when he was talking about being able to bring in like either micro-credentialing or badging or something where you could set up a program, and as they go through steps and learn skills, they get something, a badge or a micro-credential through the library that shows that they have accomplished this. And so I think that you have some great ways to get people to come in, keep them coming back, and keep them building so that the skills. And one of the things that may or may not apply to every area that we have represented today, but in my working with districts around the country, school districts, there's a segment of the population that is very nervous about going into a school. Why? Because I wasn't successful when I was in school. So I don't want to go back into the school. However, few, if anyone, has been unsuccessful at the library. It's a welcome place. It's a place where the entire community is welcome to come. And so if you can move some of the programs that are not necessarily being super well attended and successful in the district to your venue, it becomes a much better community organization. It's the slow process of making school comfortable for those who were not comfortable there before. And it provides a way to get everybody working together and coming into yours, because we want people to be confident. But if I'm a little nervous about going into school, because the last time I was in school, it wasn't a good thing. It wasn't good for me. I didn't want to be there. I didn't get the feeling they wanted me to be there either. And now I've got kids there. And I'm probably not going to show up for a lot of the things that maybe I could or should. But at the library, everybody goes to the library. It's a fun place. It's a place where I'm welcome, my family's welcome, and everyone can come together. So I think that there are some really nice ways that you can work together with the school, and that there are plenty of ways. And I loved what Regina said earlier, to go from cradle to career through the library and the resources and the things that are available to build confidence for every family, every person in that family to come up and help and be able to be successful. So thank you. And Justin will be coming up.
Thank you, Kelly. Okay, so I'm going to start with a little bit about our community, because I find when speaking in a library context, it's helpful to kind of know if you're comparing apples to apples a little bit. So we are a relatively small town, actually a very small town in Eastern Texas. We have about 5,400 people in our community. We're actually an old sawmill town in like the forest side of East Texas. We do deal in our community with about a population that's about 54% Hispanic. There are some language barriers in our community. And so I think that's important to kind of set the stage for sort of how we operate as STEM educators in the library. And I think it was really important that Kelly brought up the idea of comfort in school. I think it's also important, and a lot of my presentation will kind of touch on comfort as a library professional trying to teach STEM, because I know that a lot of us don't really have that background. So with that in mind, a little bit more about me. I studied history. My background is in history, liberal arts, lots of English. I read a ton. I enjoy music. I work with the high school dance team here. I am not a science teacher. I am not any other kind of teacher. I thought I wanted to be at one time and ended up in the library space instead. But I do want to be sure that everyone working in a library knows that this is doable. You can do this without an educational background. I would love to have a teacher on staff, but that's not in a rural library's budget, unfortunately. So what I like to point out with our STEM here when I talk to our staff is that we facilitate exploration in the library. I think Joseph hit on this a little bit. We don't necessarily plan lesson plans in the library like you might in a more traditional setting. We believe that our attendees are more, they're better served in the library if we just kind of give them a framework and let them explore. And it also takes a lot of the pressure off of us as library professionals. We don't have to fully know the ins and outs of everything that we're doing. Obviously, we want to have enough of a framework to be able to explain, if we're doing an experiment, the basic science behind it, or something, an activity of that sort. But we find that this is actually more fun for us because we get to learn along with whoever is working our programs, teaching our programs in our space for that day. And again, this does give us an opportunity as library professionals to teach literacy and research skills. So we may not have all the answers. And I think especially working with kids or teenagers, it's really important to model that we can say, hey, I don't know that, but I can show you how we can find that answer. And I can show you a reliable place to look for that answer. I think that's, in the last couple of years especially, has been something that we've really doubled up on in the library space here, not just showing this is the internet, this is how you use the computer, this is how you find a reliable research tool, and how to sort of differentiate between just information on Wikipedia that is maybe reliable, but we don't know, or sending you to a university website that's vetted information. That's been really helpful for us. So with STEM in the library, we started actually with an ALA grant. I know those seem to be a little bit, they can be a little intimidating, especially if you're a smaller library, but I would encourage you to jump in, especially if they're not some of the massive grants that require a ton of back-end reporting, because they are doable. And I think ALA is really making a concerted push to work with smaller libraries right now. They see the need to get some of their funding and programming out of some of the larger cities. So we actually started with an ALA grant for an exhibit called Discover Earth. That was a nationally touring exhibit that came here. We hosted programming for about 3 months. And after that, we sort of had to figure out, okay, how do we keep this going? Because again, that continued engagement is really important. So what I would say, what has been successful for us is to begin with what you already have in the library. These are just some thoughts that we kind of look at. Do you have an area of your nonfiction collection that does not circulate often, or that does circulate or does not circulate often? Think either way. If you have a particular area, if you know that kids or readers in your area are particularly interested in bugs and animals, that is a great place to start because you have built-in interest in your community. If you have a part of your collection that is not circulating, that's also a good way to look at it and think, is it maybe because they're intimidated by this information? Is this something that we could build more comfort around this area of our collection? I also like to think about things that we have locally that there's kind of a natural interest around. So in East Texas, we deal with a lot of weather. We have hurricanes, we have droughts, we have a lot of plant life and animal life, especially in the eastern part here. And so we sort of think about building our programming around things that families are going to experience. So if we know hurricane season is gearing up, we might do some earth science and explain sort of the science behind hurricanes, and work with some of our local extension officers and things like that to explain how to prep for hurricane season. And then also it's really important, especially in a small library on a small budget, do you have materials that can be repurposed? If you have leftover craft materials, if you have leftover things from summer reading, something like that, that is sitting in a closet, that's how a lot of our projects got started here. We realized that we had closets full of things that weren't necessarily getting used effectively anymore, and we didn't love that. So we repurposed some of our things to make kits that could be checked out. So our STEM kits, there are things that you can buy. We actually created our own. We looked at things that we had on hand, and I apologize, we don't have any pictures. They're actually all on the campuses. It's end of the year and teachers were like, we need things to do with our kids. So all of our STEM kits are still on our school campuses here, which is a great problem. But we like to focus on reusable items. Anything that maybe we're not going to have to replace every time it's used is important because, again, cost is a concern for a small library. We find that it's really important for us to include laminated instructions, otherwise they're going to come back in pieces. probably with some stains that you can't get off, and you're going to have to replace those every time they circulate. We also include cleanup instructions, and we find that that helps make sure that things come back to us in the way that they went out. We do have content kits for the library, our list for the library staff and for the people that circulate our things. And then we also try to provide odd items. So if it's maybe something that we don't think that our community is going to have at home or have easy access to, we will make sure that's included in the kit, but we don't try to go above and beyond and give them dish soap and things like that. Unless we know it is a situation where that is going to be a barrier to being able to complete the activity. We try to just provide framework and then say, these are things you're already going to have in your home, in your classroom, in your daycare center, things like that, that you can reuse without us having to do all of the work there. So I included this picture. This is kind of when we started doing STEM programming in the library. This was kind of a teacher's worst nightmare because it's not super structured, and we kind of just put things in the floor and on tables and let kids explore. So this particular activity was part of our earth science unit. It let kids kind of experience snow, because in East Texas, that is not common until this year when all of Texas had an ice storm, and we're all very much done with snow for a while. But this was a good way for students to get hands-on. They asked a lot of questions. It got them out of their chairs. It got them more interacting with each other, interacting with our staff. It let the teachers actually, this was, I believe, on a school trip here. It let the teachers bring back some of the concepts that they were taught in the classroom. So this was a really great way for us to kind of push things back to the things that they had already learned. And again, get some of the pressure off of us as library staff to be full educators when the teachers could pop in and say, hey, you actually know about this, and then they take over for it. And that's awesome. These are some examples of some other kits. Again, I don't have pictures of the actual things. Everything checks out in sort of a plastic tote that can be wiped down. These are some of our most popular things. We find that the volcano goes out pretty regularly. The tooth has actually been really popular the last couple of years. All of this is actually, you can buy it on Amazon. You can buy it a lot of places, but we buy a lot of our things on Amazon because we find that the cost tends to be most effective on Amazon. And then obviously anyone that has worked with kids or families in the library in general know that anything that makes a mess is super popular. So the Mentos rocket has always been a popular thing. We break it out anytime we really don't have any idea what to do with our kids. There's a good science lesson there, and it's fun. We've also learned over the years of doing that. I believe you're technically supposed to do it with Diet Coke. We've let the kids experiment with different types of Coke and different types of candies and see what happens. And so it becomes a little more of a hands-on experiment. They can explore again and figure out what works, why something doesn't work, that kind of thing. There's lots of questions kind of built in to that activity. And then again, we do build around literacy. So I would say if you are building kits that are going to circulate, we do also have the snap circuit, things like that. We have a lot in our closets here that go out, but definitely use the books that you have in your collections. We always want to point kids to things that are going to jog their brains a little bit, make them read more, and we find that we don't have to do a lot of it. Actually, we find that when the kids do these activities, when they do things with their parents or with teachers, they naturally come to us with questions. They want to know more about what they're seeing. They want to know more about what they're experiencing. So if you have duplicate copies of books, those are great things you can pull off the shelf, create some more space without having to fully weed your collections, but also put into kits that are going to circulate. The Magic School Bus has been around for forever. If you're in libraries, you know this. If you're not in libraries, you know this. But we found that our Magic School Bus books are a little bit intimidating sometimes because they can be a little bit dense and they're not just a quick bedtime read for some parents. But when they are kind of built into our STEM kits, they circulate more. The parents are kind of more on board with something that's a little more robust reading, or letting their kids kind of explore something that might be a little bit more difficult. And then cost. I was really glad that Kelly brought up cost and budget for this, because that is something we keep an eye on here in the library. We spend less than $100 a year on kit upkeep. We try to keep this as cost effective as possible, because we do recognize that while libraries are doing a lot of STEM, we are still literacy educators. And I think that there's been a lot of push in both directions. We're kind of recorrecting things here a bit in our county, specifically in our region, and focusing more on the literacy, because we feel that if kids are getting to 3rd grade, 8th grade, high school, and they don't have their literacy skills to actually read and do some of the science or technology or engineering, then we're not really creating well-rounded students anymore. We're creating a new issue. And so we focus still a lot on traditional library service. We try to keep our kits usable without using too much of our budget. But I would say, in addition to grants, we reach out a lot to local businesses. Our grocery store here is great with kit upkeep. STEM is a really easy sell right now, specifically. But reach out to your grocery stores and say, hey, we need 15 bottles of dish soap for our kits for the year. Can you help us out with that? They're usually happy to donate these things. Our local bank has been really great. Other businesses in the area have been really great about doing this as well, either donating materials or donating funds here and there. And usually all we do is, if we reprint our instruction sheets for the year, we include their logos, or we put labels in the boxes that go out, so they get a little bit of attention. They get a little bit of advertising. They're usually thrilled to be a part of something that's education-based like this. And then who benefits? So it's important to think about, yeah, we can provide all these things, but is it being used in the community? So again, we do serve a community that is predominantly Hispanic, that is working with language barriers, maybe some income barriers, things like that. And so it's important for us to think about sort of who's using this. So local teachers get a lot of use out of these kits with us. We do form partnerships with schools that the teachers give us a lot of feedback of what they're teaching in the classroom, so we can build around concepts that they're already using, rather than us having to just recreate the wheel here. We find that we're more effective if we're supplementing what is already being taught, rather than trying to do it all ourselves. We did also find that our homeschool and non-traditional learners in the county, in the region, their usage went through the roof when we started doing more of the STEM programming in the library, because they are maybe more comfortable with basic math and some literacy things at home. But STEM education is scary sometimes. It is for us, it is for our homeschool educators. And so this made that go through the roof. Local Boys and Girl Scout troops have really heavily used these kits. They've used a lot of our STEM programming in the library to work on things that they have to have for their troops. So if they're working on a particular badge or something like that, they lean into this a lot. And then families, if grandparents are babysitting for the weekend and need their kits, they get home, that's something they can do with grandbabies. We have found that since we've started leaning into STEM programming in the library a little more meaningfully, that we are kind of a first call now. If teachers or families need assistance, or their kids saw a bug that they're interested in, they know to call the library now and ask if we have anything that will help them explore this a little bit more. And I bring up bugs because we do have one family right now that every time they see something outside, their kids, they want to bring the kids in and grab books. So we're having to always make sure we have materials for local wildlife and things right now, which is awesome. And then just quickly, some resources that we use here. If you're not familiar with Steve Spangler, I would highly recommend. They're pretty cost effective. Everything you buy on the website comes as a kit or as materials that you can use. There's usually a little bit of a lesson plan that kind of briefly explains everything behind it. That's super helpful. The Lunar and Planetary Institute is right down the road from us here in Houston. If you do any sort of space programming, they have probably created a full everything. You can go on their website, print it out. It's all right there for you. They work really closely with educators and with libraries. They've also got some really interesting storytelling things on there from Native American communities and how they sort of view the stars and the cosmos. So that's been a really cool way for us to introduce some extra literacy and also a little bit more of a different culture into our STEM programming. We also use our local universities, junior colleges. The Texas A&M Extension office is great if we want someone to come in and talk about weather or different things. And then high school science classes, I hate to refer to them as slave labor a little bit, but when it comes to libraries, these high school students need things to do, and it helps them learn to teach. So we lean on our science classes a little bit and let them come in and teach classes for our younger kids or for our adults. They like to show off some of the things that they've learned and have their parents come in. In non-COVID times, we have a little bit of a science fair for our older kids, and it's still a fun process. And then one thing I didn't list, and I'm wrapping up, is the National Girls Collaborative Project. They are a nationwide project that is aimed at gender equity in STEM. They have an office, I believe, in every state in the country, and they can reach out and provide you either activities or speakers that are basically free. And I highly recommend their organization. We've worked with them for a lot of years here. So I think that's it. I'd be happy to answer some questions. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you so much. Oh my goodness, a virtual round of applause, please. Great line of speakers here. Again, we have their contact information. This Conversations for Action will be recorded, and Sam has actually put in the link where you can find that. I want to thank each of my speakers today. A fabulous job today. I can't even expound on a lot of the things that I've actually wrote down here on my notes. I mean, hands-on, minds-on, ready to learn. And this is an opportunity where we're transitioning into summer. And I believe even Michelle had expressed that this is a wonderful opportunity to engage the, the youth in these types of activities in the library. Find a small STEM kit. And Joseph even said, even if you have spaghetti, marshmallows, something that you can pull together, Legos will work. So this is a time during the summer that we can really engage and help our families and youth to excel in the science, technology, engineering, and math. And then also we heard about STEM, but we heard about STEAM, adding the arts to it. And then also adding literacy or reading as well with STREAM. So again, not too much time that I have to expound, but I like to be able to at least respond to a couple questions. And I think we have one in the hopper. Sam, if I see, Stacy, was your question answered? I believe it was answered, that you put in the hopper. If there's not any other questions, I'd like to go ahead and have Sam put up the slide so I can go over the events, the upcoming events. June actually provides an opportunity for various, activities. I will say that as a way of inclusion, diversity, and equity, keep in mind that as we are in June, this is also LGBTQ plus Pride Month. And this is an opportunity to also put on display in terms of your collections that anything historical materials, posters, readings, artwork as it relates to lesbian, gay, bisexual, and queer community. This is a cultural, event that happens throughout the whole month. So for those who are able, keep that in mind. We also see that the American Library Association annual conference is coming up as well. And our partners, Save the Children, have announced last Conversations for Action that there will be scholarships available for 5 Rural Library Network members. And I'm going to tell you how you can become a member if you're not already a member. And July the 7th, keep in mind that we'll have another Conversations for Action, again, at the same time, same place. We're going to focus on social and emotional learning. And then July 28th, through August the 1st, we'll have the Black Caucus for American Library Association. That is actually coming up. We, the Rural Library Network team, will be presenting. August the 1st, we'll have another Conversations for Action, and that will focus on arts and humanities integration in libraries. December 1st, I need you to mark your calendar. This is when we're going to have our Rural Library Network Summit. We hope to have a good showing. It's going to be virtual. Registration is free. Next slide for me, please, Sam. Awesome. So Rural Library Fellowship is underway. You should be receiving comments or notices for those who applied. This is funded in part by IMLS and Save the Children. Up to $6,000 in resources per fellow will be provided. The kickoff, we'll have a kickoff on July 20th as our first engagement webinar for those fellows. We anticipate having 22 fellows. And this is how you can actually join our Rural Library Network membership at this particular website here, www.berea.edu/PFE/RLN-membership. We thank you for joining us today. Thank you so much, speakers. We are out of time. Thank you, Sam, for your technical support. And again, a round of applause virtually for each and every speaker that was with us today. Please join us next month. Take care.